It's all about the macro productions.
What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Look, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Dave on NBC.
Jack Marius Tack Theratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him.
Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guard.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Muammar Gaddafi.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swangles in Fort Lauderdale?
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the Sears hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard.
I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. If you're watching us on Rockfin or Rumble, or you're listening wherever podcasts are served, thanks a million. We appreciate it. We couldn't do it without you. If you want to connect with us, the best way is the website, macroaggressions.io. You can find information about the books, the podcasts, and all that good stuff. We could not do the show without the help of our amazing sponsors. They've been, Chemical Free Body has been with us from the beginning. Since this topic of this conversation is going to be about health, let's stick with health and encourage you to go take a look at what Tim James and the crew is making over at Chemical Free Body. It's the best supplements you can get. I mean, they actually work. They do what they're supposed to do. The 90-day detox bundle is fantastic. I've done it twice. I encourage you to take a look at it. It's Green 85 green powder drink in the morning. Just slam that down and a handful of capsules, and that's it. It'll get you leaned out in a way that maybe other supplements could not. If you're interested, it's, we're coming up. Here's the new year. This is the time that people always start to get serious about their health. You can do it any time of year, of course, but if you're so inclined, go to chemicalfreebody.com, read up about it, see what you think. If you find something that you like, the discount code is MACRO. And also, we appreciate our new sponsor, our new real partner on this, Christian Yordanev. He's been my certified health practitioner out of Portugal for the last couple of years now. I trust him with my life. I trust him with my health. He's done all kinds of run organic acid tests on me to find out what's going on underneath the hood. I encourage you to do the same as well. If you're interested, he's got a website you can check out, livelongerformula.com. And what he is offering for our listeners is a metabolic function assessment. If you mention macroaggressions, it'll give you an idea to start working with him, what's going on inside your body. You don't want to be in denial. Don't outsource this to Western doctors. They don't even know what they're looking for. You're going to have to take control of your own health. It's the most important thing that you can do, and there's nothing more expensive than regret. So do this. Go to livelongerformula.com, read up about it. You've met Christian. He's been on the show plenty of times, and if you think it's right for you, then pull the trigger on it. And I'll tell you, all right, let's get in. Now we got the business out of the way. I'm excited. We're going to welcome everybody to the authors of The Red Pill Revolution, John Gusty and Dr. Jeremy Ayres. Hey, guys, how are you? It's good to see you. How are you doing?
Nice to see you, Charlie. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Charlie. As you know, I'm a little bit jet lagged having moved back to Canada, but otherwise I'm really happy to be here.
Well, we're really happy. We'll take you in whatever condition we can get you in. I'll tell you, this is turned into a show that started out about government conspiracies, government, theoretical and actual, and it's really sort of evolved over the years into health. And of course that overlaps with government conspiracies. We see how this has been made to impact our health over the years. I'm curious for you, John. You spent 30 years in the music and entertainment industry, and now you've transitioned into health. What was it that along your journey that made you sort of focus, maybe make a little shift here later in life?
Well, first, let me say I don't think you can even. For those who are conspiratorial minded, I don't think you can start talking conspiracies and not get into the health and wellness space. I mean, there's moon stuff and alien stuff and shape of the earth stuff you can talk about, but I think some of the biggest conspiracies that are have always been right before us have been in the health and wellness space, and that's certainly what turned my life in a different direction. I'll try to make this as condensed as possible. My wife of almost 30 years now, when we both came out of the music industry, and when I met her, she was walking with a cane, and she had just recently been diagnosed, and we could do a whole show on that word, diagnose. Yeah. She was diagnosed with what they told her was multiple sclerosis. And when we became a couple, we're very, very different people. I'm a bit of a digger. When I get into something, I just want to dig and find and kind of immerse myself in the subject. And my wife is kind of the opposite. She's very trusting. Just, when she's a used car salesman's wet dream, to be honest with you. I mean, she trusts people. And I started going to her appointments with her, and it just floored me, because I'm a relatively healthy person. I've never spent much time in any sort of medical offices, and so I didn't really have much experience or perspective from that angle. And I started going to her appointments with her and just seeing the everything from anytime the prescription pad could come out and they could write a prescription, they would, and just the inability to answer questions, like they would make a statement, tell her something, and she would just go, okay, nod her head. But I would ask a question, and it took about, 3 months of those type of experiences to figure out, and like it kind of says in my bio, I've spent a lifetime in the entertainment industry, so I'm used to marketing and narratives and dangling carrots in front of people to get them to do certain things, win this signed guitar, win concert tickets, the stuff like that. But when I saw those same techniques being played out, but instead of winning guitars and concert tickets, you're messing with people's health and wellness. And in some cases, enticing them to take part in procedures and behaviors that could, and I've seen it with my own eyes, ultimately result in death. I mean, that's just a whole other level of cringe. And it just changed me. It just changed me. Again, I don't mind. Marketing is all manipulation. I mean, that's what marketing is manipulation. And again, I don't mind people being manipulated to win a free guitar or concert tickets, but when you're manipulating people into dangerous, often deadly behavior, whole other level of just awfulness. And so I just that turned my passion, and it was my wife, of course, but it was a bigger subject. It affects all of us. And so when you make a life turn like that, your immediate circle of friends tends to grow and change. And my circle of friends grew to include a gentleman that's sharing the show with me, Jeremy Ayres. And Jeremy and I are fellow rabbit hole dwellers. I don't think you'd be hard pressed to find a rabbit hole we haven't jumped down. But what really struck, us about each other is, and it's gotten to be pretty rare these days, Jeremy and I can have conversations about anything and everything, but we don't end up getting butthurt should the other one disagree with the other one. And you know, we both believe conversation and experience is how you learn your way forward. And we just, I don't know, the two of us are just kind of ideologically joined at the hip. I think we're adventurous in just wanting to learn and share. And so that's just, it just set me anyways on a whole different life path. Instead of messing with celebrities and album covers and songs, there's bigger things that I wanted to sink my time and attention into.
Yeah, I understand that. And you come out of the music industry for 30 years. I come out of real estate for 25 years. For us, it theoretically should be easier for us to change our minds with regard to the medical industry and the health industry, because we didn't go through that Rockefeller school of medicine where everything is ingrained into us. But Dr. Ayres, I'm curious about you, because as a doctor, you are forced to go through that. I wonder if the changes were a little bit more difficult for you to make. I would imagine there's less support in your industry for anybody that veers outside of the established narratives of health. So how was the transition for you from waking up to this current paradigm of the health industry?
Well, before I answer that, Charlie, when you introduced John and used the word transitioning, suddenly everything made sense after knowing him for 10 years. I think you've found the missing piece of jigsaw that I wasn't able to pick up on.
That's a whole other show we'll have to do.
That's
thank you.
You look good, though, John. You look good.
You know, thanks for that. It's going to help me a lot to continue having a relationship with him. But anyway, in all seriousness, you know, you introduced that your show has morphed into more health, and you know, where I'd rather start is with we're at war. You know, and I say this to many clients and members and many podcasts, and it shocks some people until you start defining it. Your question was it difficult for me to sort of get to where I am and go through that process? Yes and no. First of all, my initial training was actually into a family business in as a carpenter and joiner and building, and I was an international athlete, a canoeist representing Great Britain. So I was very fit, and you know, at 21, 22, thought I knew everything, as you do at 21 and 22. And I hurt my back very badly and ended up in an osteopath's office, similar to a chiropractor, if guys don't know what that is. And he was a particularly portly chap, looked more like a British butcher than a health advocate, you know. And it was a very sort of factory-like clinic with just 12 beds and curtains, and he was doing the adjustment and 12 students doing the massage and things. And he handed me over to an Eastern European woman that had more facial stubble than me and certainly bigger muscles. And I was tortured on that by massage. And then this chap came in and put me into a weird position, and I had no explanation, and cracked my back, and the pain was dramatically reduced. And that actually was my beginning of, I've got to do this. It was a revelation. It was, I never liked doctors. I think a lot of people will resonate that going into a doctor's office, let alone a hospital, it's just a horrible place to be. The whole energy there. I feel the same in churches with a few exceptions. And that's sort of, I understand why perhaps now, because I think it has the energy of many horrid things going on that I'm sure you haven't talked about on your show. But anyway, so what launched me, my first training was in osteopathy. And I managed to get myself into what was considered the best college in England in osteopathy. And after a year, my family was very worried that I was making all the wrong decisions. And after a year, I was absolutely bored out of my brains, other than the pathology and anatomy teachers who were absolutely brilliant and very, very interesting cases they'd worked on. But this chap was sitting next to me from up north. Now, probably the same in the States and Canada. North and south, there's quite a divide in how we look at each other. So I don't normally connect with these northern dudes. And he turned around to me and said, "This is crap, isn't it?" And I was so shocked that someone else was thinking what I was thinking. Cut a long story short, his father trained under a great man who became my first mentor called Harry Hawes, who was up north in Durham. And he'd restarted a college at 76 years old. And he asked me if I wanted to come up with him, this chap. So I did. Absolutely terrified of getting in the car with this mad northerner. But went up north into, you guys probably don't remember the Hammer House of Horror movies. It was a very English thing in the 60s, but it was always misty, foggy moors and old church buildings and vampire, anyway, that's the kind of building that this course was being running on a moor with the fog. It was actually a Catholic priest training college. So there was all these huge paintings of bishops with frightened choir boys. And I remember looking at these thinking, those choir boys are terrified. Now, again, we probably know why now. But it was the opposite to where I'd come from. Everything was secondhand. Everything was crap from equipment-wise compared to where I come. But then I met Harry. And as soon as he opened his mouth, I knew I was in the presence of, he would never accept terms like genius or anything. He's a very down-to-earth chap, but he was an absolute genius in his field. And I was fortunate enough that he saw something in me, which I suspected I had. And he told me that, he said, you've got it, which was quite intimidating at the time. But he took me under his wing, very much under his wing. And he taught me, so this is back when I'm like 22. So what's that? Over 30 years ago, pre-internet, pre-book burning and what have you. And he told me there and then, he said, the institutions are not set up. The charities are not set up to, further research and cure things. It's a business. And the worst practitioners end up in the registers and the authority positions because they can't do the job. And again, it's a very long story cut short. He was absolutely right. And so he set me off. He was responsible for setting me off at already looking at things differently. Okay. Now, back when I was a boy, cancer came into my family. My brother's mother-in-law died of breast cancer. I would argue that she died of the treatment now. But at the time, what was the first time I'd seen this horrific disease come into a family and all the grief and anger and worry and division it caused. It's horrible. And that, when I was 12, I thought this has got to be fixed. Like a young boy, this has got to be fixed. So when I finished with Harry, it suddenly kind of took that 12-year-old boy, this has got to be fixed, and launched me on a long, long journey of mentors and research. And so the more I research, and I do honestly, I'm sorry if it sounds arrogant, I do honestly believe I've been guided and most certainly extremely fortunate to be well mentored and guided into the bodies of information and text that essentially leads you further and further and further away from even your, professional bodies and understanding. And within all of that, at some point, if you have a critical brain, which is what so-called conspiracy theorists have indeed, you have to sit there and go, you know what? This is not accidental. If you flip a coin, it's 50-50, right? You keep flipping it 50. This is deliberate. And at some point, and I was very early on, you have to come to accept that there is this is why I started with we're at war, Charlie. This is a very, very deliberate way of keeping mankind ill, suffering, weak, worried, and worse. And yes, I accept there are some really wonderful, lovely people in quote-unquote modern medicine, albeit the youngest medicine on the planet, and it's certainly not medicine in most cases. I accept there's wonderful people in there trying to do wonderful things, but oh my, have they been misled themselves.
Yeah, I'll retell a story I've told before, but when we were moving back to California, we had been away, and our daughter was about 1, and we didn't know who to go to as far as pediatricians. We just kind of went through, let's just start with these 3 major ones and we'll go from there. The first one we met with, first of all, every kid in his waiting room was completely sick. First thing I noticed when I walked in was, I don't even want to be in here because everyone, I get it, it's a doctor's office, that's where you go when you're sick, but there were no healthy kids. Everybody was sick. And so I was like making a mental note of that. And we had come, the first year or so of my daughter's life, we had a pediatrician, And they said, what do you want to do? And we said, we're not doing vaccines. We're just not doing it. Okay. And so when I moved to California and this new doctor we were interviewing with, we weren't in his office 30 seconds before he said, how are we doing on the vaccine situation? And I go, well, we're on a delayed schedule, which is code for we're not doing it. And he said, what's the matter? What's the matter? You don't trust the government? And I thought he was kidding. It was such a comment that's right up my alley. I kind of laughed. I was, not really. And he said, okay, well, now I know what I'm working with, and wrote something down on his clipboard. And I just looked at my wife and kind of grabbed her hand, and I go, you know what? I think we're good here. I think we're going to leave. And we just left.
Charlie, in my personal circle of friends this past week, I'm aware of someone, young couple, very similar situation as to what you just described. They went in exact same thing. The very first thing that they were quizzed on is the vax schedule, and they said that they're not doing it. They didn't even say delayed. They said we're just not doing it. They were in and out of that office in less than 10 minutes. They were told there was no need for them to come back.
Yeah, and the reason behind that, as we dig into that, is that here in the States, if as long as you keep 64% of your customer base as a pediatrician fully vaccinated, you're then eligible for payout by the pharmaceutical industry, which works out to about $400 per customer, and on average that works out to about $100,000 a year. So if the doctor wants to send his kids to college or get the new Mercedes, the best thing he can do from a financial standpoint is make sure that any of those people who are going to screw up his ratio don't even come in. We figured that out right about the same time that was happening too. You'd love to think that you lived in a world where healthcare decisions would sort of be detached from.
This is why it's
money.
so fundamental that we're now having these conversations, particularly post COVID, which is what we've called it from the beginning, and the data now unequivocally proves that it was a data-driven fake pandemic to drive people with fear into offices to put God knows what in their arm. But that's actually the bit I want to come back to, because if by any chance someone in your audience is listening that hasn't worked out vaccinations that are I call them vax-sin nations, and the S is a $sign, and that's about how it should be spelled. But if they haven't worked that out yet, and this is offensive, let's say maybe some new people might listen to this show, all John and I are interested in is having conversations and having plain English or plain language conversations and getting people to question things. And so when I have any young mother or anybody come to see me on this subject, I say, well, what's in it? And no one to this day knows what's in the vaccination. They go, I've read the leaflet, or I've done the research, and it's reduced this. We'll go into the data later on, because there's another mass conspiracy of how they manipulate data to present things as helpful. But nonetheless, they don't know what's in it. And usually the doctor and nurse or whoever else is pushing it don't know what's in it. Now, when you do go and look what's in the vaccinations in just plain language, I don't know. I've never had a single mother, because it's usually the mothers that come. It doesn't mean the fathers aren't supporting, but it's normally the mothers. I haven't had a single mother that would then want to put that in their baby's mouth, let alone their arm. And it makes zero sense. No matter what marketing, which has been very successful, has been employed, it makes zero sense. Once you get there, you're breaking spells. And it really is spells. Evil is the word live backwards. And what we're living in, as you know, although I think we're in a renaissance time, I think it's incredibly positive right now, the trajectory we're on. But we've been under a spell where, as you well know, everything's been flipped upside down and inside out. We don't have a health system or a health service. We have, at best, one of the most successful business models ever brought into existence and legally protected. And at worst, it's a depopulation tool. And certainly in The Art of War, which everybody should read, it's far superior to maim the enemy than kill the enemy. And when we look at the maiming, autism, just for one example, and I have a autistic stepson who's now doing, really well, and his lights went out, as mums know what I'm talking about, the day after the MMR injection, and then started seizing. But if you just take autism alone, it's, what is it, 1 in 34? It's probably even more than that right now. But we do not have a healthy people. We couldn't raise an army even if we wanted to in England, I'm told at the moment, because everybody's so bloody unhealthy.
You're not limited to England either. Here in the U.S., in terms of people being eligible to join the armed forces, they've had to lower the requirements. People couldn't do pull-ups. They couldn't, they take them with criminal records now or without high school degree. Everyone has been impacted by this. And I'm curious, Dr. Ayres, in the U.S., we have the 1986 Vaccine Adverse Effect Reporting System, the Vaccine Protection Act that went out, that made it so that it was impossible to sue manufacturers of vaccines here in the States. What sort of barriers do they have for getting accountability from the vaccine makers in the UK?
Well, it's all the same game, but also this reporting system's a joke because the doctor has to report it, and so it's a tip of an iceberg. Yeah. When someone, oh my goodness, this will get me going. But we talk about evidence-based medicine, and I just laugh, right? If you talk to what I consider true scientists like Zoe Harcum and Georgia Eads, they'll tell you that there's almost no science being done. If you talk to doctors that are honest, they're not reading the alleged studies. They read the title and the conclusion. Okay, so there isn't evidence-based medicine, but from the legal point of when you're damaged and you try and go to your doctor or anybody else to try and legally find remedy, they'll just say, well, there's no evidence that these vaccinations or this medication or this or what have you. So they've tied the system up really well until COVID came along, and I call it the virus that keeps giving, not that any viruses have ever been proven to actually exist other than in a computer model. But I think it's the virus that keeps giving. And because so much damage has been done and will continue to be done, what we're seeing is people that were not interested in looking at health. Why would they? I mean, they go to the doctor when they need it, and the doctors are nice. And certainly if you've been in an accident, broken a leg, bleeding, and you get a good emergency team, which isn't always the case, but if you get a good emergency team, that's where you got to go, right? But outside of that, they weren't interested until they started at seeing their own people die or become very ill. Where I've just moved from, a small village in a beautiful part of England, possibly the most beautiful village in England, we used to have one ambulance a week, and we were getting 7 to 12 a day. And the chap I work with, Graham Norbury, who's sort of a Dr. Jack Kruse expert, he works with me on our membership site. He had some friends that the husband ended up being blue lighted, as we call it. Don't know if you use the same term in the States, with a sudden heart attack. And the wife went in with him, and this is about 2 months ago, and they went into the hospital. And the first thing the wife said is this caused by the vaccine? And to our shock, and this is why I say we're in a renaissance, the entire medical team went, absolutely. This is all we're seeing. Whereas 3-4 years ago, if any system doctor, a respected medical clean whistle doctor said, hang on, maybe they were out, they were cancelled, they were ruined, right? And I just see this wonderful flip. And so as people are starting to, unfortunately, be casualties of war or see casualties of war in their own family, they are starting to listen to this kind of podcast and this kind of conversation more than I've been able to achieve in 20 or 30 years. And I think it's a real exciting time for this kind of conversation.
Charlie, did you see, I believe it was last week, that the Biden administration extended the legal immunity? I think they extended it out another 75 years. Don't quote me on the time frame, but the legal immunity has been pushed out for the for the pharmaceutical companies.
Why on earth would we do such a thing like that?
It's funny. We are still in mass. We are still having this, this, let me put it this way. We live in a pop culture society that will do a deep dive on whether or not Taylor Swift is dating a particular individual or not. And there'll be these forensic, reporters following her around with cameras and everything. But you take something like, vaccination, which is, they're not even hiding it. The topic of vaccination is a theoretical concept. It's been a theoretical concept since it's not only a theoretical concept, it's a theoretical concept that they have to keep that concept alive because vaccination needs the topic of virology to even exist as a topic, and the topic of virology is a theoretical conversation. If Jeremy and I, when the scamdemic started, we did a documentary that I put together, and I kind of used the analogy of Sasquatch, and it's like Sasquatch. Just anytime you talk about viruses, just insert the word Sasquatch because we don't know if Sasquatch exists. There's blurred photos of what people think might be Sasquatch and all, but until someone captures a Sasquatch, and Sasquatch can be studied and determined, is Sasquatch good? Is Sasquatch bad? Does Sasquatch have any, can we glean any information from Sasquatch? But they have been trying to sell us Sasquatch repellent spray before they've even caught the Sasquatch, and there are people who are still walking around with their Sasquatch masks on because they're afraid of Sasquatch, which hasn't even been proven to exist yet.
Well, I've had Dr. Andrew Kaufman, who was my next door neighbor and in Acapulco a couple years ago. I see him. He's been on this show. Alex Zach's been on. Tom Cowan. We've had the conversations about all of this. But if you think about it, it's actually brilliant. If you've got something like an industry like virology or vaccinations in particular that is just fake pseudoscience at its core, right? It actually works in their benefit.
Polite.
Yeah. If you can get people debating whether is this vaccine better than this vaccine or this vaccine, it's like you've got them debating about which one's better than the other one without ever asking the question is, do any of these even work, right? Is that what we found over the years? I mean, I know that I got the sale pitch on polio.
Do the viruses even exist to warrant looking for something that Sasquatch repellent spray? And I'm sure I haven't spoken with Kaufman or Tom Cohen, who is equally brilliant, but as I say to John, the main weapon we have right now to change the world from a vaccine conversation point of view is to introduce. Most people have no idea that viruses have never, ever actually been found and isolated and studied. They're all fragments of what turns out to be dead and decaying cell tissue that have been, parts of it fed into a computer, it's called in silica, and wormhole, a computer model of a virus is manufactured, and that's the only place they exist. And this is why I think, Billy Go Gates chose the word virus back in the day. He could have chosen germ, he could have chosen bacteria, he could have used a number of different words, but he deliberately chose virus, and I believe that was to put into the subconscious that viruses are bad, because you don't even say pathogenic virus, you just say virus and there's an assumption, right? And so as you brought this, as this architect steered pandemic came in to try and achieve world communism, which it failed, and it's going to continue to fail, it's already primed in everyone's minds. Can you see the power? If you got Stefan Lanka on, who's the authority that, he is a virologist, and he'll tell you we've never found a virus. And this is why, because then you said it's not even pseudoscience, because if it's not science, it's not science. It's an absolute scam. And God knows how many people it's maimed and killed.
Well, look at look at what's happened in just the last month alone. Okay, so I think it was the first week of November, the Dutch government officials publicly admitted that the entire pandemic was a military operation, and they were taking their cues from NATO officials. I mean, and that's out there. Just anyone wants to search for Dutch government, COVID pandemic, NATO, and there's all sorts of stories out there. So you've got that. A couple weeks ago here in the States, 520-page report by the Oversight Committee released. The first couple lines say that the virus was not of natural origin, which is a roundabout way of saying it doesn't exist. I mean, imagine if your sweet little child looks up at you and goes, "Daddy, is Santa real?" And your answer to him is, "Well, Santa is not of natural origin." It's like, okay, but people go, "But I see Santa. He's on that street corner and he was over at Macy's." And it's like, yeah, well, that's the man-made Santa. That Santa is not of natural origin. And then I think just recent, Jeremy, I think you were the one that shot it to me. The Dr. Bay in Australia was just recently vindicated. By the Australian government, and it's
huge from a system point of view. It's huge.
In the last month alone, you've got the Dutch government admitting it was BS. You've got the U.S. government admitting it was BS. You've got the Australian government, maybe not coming out, but they certainly vindicated a major key figure, So the dominoes are falling, but I was in a store as recent as yesterday, and I still see people walking around with masks on.
Yeah, I do too.
Can I just grab your Santa analogy, because I just want to airbrush that a little bit. Is the subtext that is getting out there is man-made virus. Right? It's not. It's Dad dressed up as Santa. So it was never Santa. It's not a man-made Santa. It's Dad, or some dodgy alcoholic that's managed to pick up a contract at some, superstore that likes to sit children on his knee. But it's not Santa. It's not a pseudo-Santa, a man-made Santa. There is no man-made viruses. It's good. If there is anything making people sick out there, it's what it's always been. Good old-fashioned poison. It's just at a much smaller level. And the word virus, interestingly, is Latin for toxin or poison. So it's kind of, again, in plain sight for you all to see. But if people start to have this conversation and see the evidence, the fear that can be dispelled and the confidence that can rise up when they try their next skullduggery move, they're going to fail even quicker. When I see people wearing masks, and unfortunately I've just traveled, and it's very sad. Not many, I have to say, but it's very sad. I feel for them. They're in literally a prison of their own mind.
Yeah. Yeah, they've had their minds broken. I'm curious about this. You mentioned viruses existing really only in computer code. Well, you've come from the UK. We've been studying and talking about what Wellcome Trust and Wellcome Leap has been doing. And one of the things that they aspire to do is to go from virus identification in their computer system to having a rush to market vaccine in 100 days. That is their goal, is to make that a possibility. Given that viruses don't exist except in computer labs, and that they're going to rush to market an endless stream of this, how do you see this playing out with the boogeyman creating their own viruses, which they claim to then prevent?
This is why I suggest what I just spoke about is so powerful, because when we do podcasts or interviews or what have you, and we say there's no viruses have ever been found and actually isolated, and then the gold standard of put into somebody and they're meant to get symptoms which you can document, and you're meant to isolate the virus from them and take it out and put it in someone else, and if they get the same symptoms, now you've fulfilled the gold standard. That's never been done, can't be done, because they've never actually isolated a virus, right? So when you understand that it's all been put into a computer model. That's how they can rush these vaccines. It's all theoretical nonsense. And not that I believe that the vaccines either are you'd have to get someone more like Stefan Lanka or more knowledgeable on the specifics, but I doubt there's mRNA technology. I still, from the best evidence that we've looked at, it's hidden nanoparticles of graphene oxide, which when you get into a human body as a conductor amplifies particularly 5G. And this is what you saw. I know this is pre-vaccine, but what you saw in the hotspots during COVID where people really were getting breathing problems, it's where they'd switched on 5G. Yeah. And what was happening is they would go in, and you probably remember hydroxychloroquine, and you know, some people with severe breathing problems would take it and get well within hours. And you'd get these system professors coming on the TV saying, well, it's not an antiviral, so we can't prescribe it, and blah, blah, blah. And they're right, it isn't an antiviral. What hydroxychloroquine does is repair hemoglobin. And the hemoglobin was damaged from the 4G or 5G, and there's a wave in between 4G and 5G release. So they weren't able to hold the oxygen. They're not even holding the oxygen in truth. They're holding the charge of oxygen. And so you can see how all of these lies with this kind of conversation can start coming together, because those that didn't have hydroxychloroquine and were intubated and ventilated, they basically blew their lungs up and killed them. Okay, but of course they died of COVID. So we're circling right the way back to, you know, we have to start looking at the very foundational. Do viruses actually exist? Have they isolated? If no, then what are we actually looking at? And if it's a computer program, try and infect you, me, or John with a computer program. Go.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and we let's not just gloss over the fact that all of this stuff, the viruses, the vaccines, the bad information, the entire medical industrial complex, the people who are orchestrating all of this, you can roll it all back to, they're all eugenicists.
Yes.
I mean, they all believe in this. They've got some key pillars of their beliefs. They do believe that humans are a force that needs to be minimized, if not eliminated, certainly controlled at the very least. They believe in transhumanism, which is, you know, you can see that
eugenics rebranded.
Yeah. Just turn on a screen and it's hard to even tell anymore who is a legit female or who is a legit male. And I'm not saying that to be I'm not phobic at all. If you are a grown man and you want to dress up like a woman and prance around, that's fine. I can still be your friend. Just don't command of me that I have to play along with that. One thing that I've always said to people, my beliefs don't make any demands of you. I just expect the same. I will honor your beliefs as long as they don't make any demands of me, because my beliefs don't make any demands of you. That's kind of a classic pillar of, you know, full disclosure, I'm a proud anarchist, and you know, and that's where that's kind of one of the pillars is you know, if you expect.
Don't you find that a really misunderstood philosophy though, anarchy?
Yes.
Yeah, when you say that, I think a lot of listeners go, "Oh."
I think it's like anything else. I mean, it's one of those terms that's been hijacked, and there are people who have been manipulated and I just think programmed into. They hear that word and they think chaos, and anarchy couldn't be a more simple ideology. It's no masters, no slaves.
It's the one ideology everybody's in favor of until somebody puts a label on it, and then they go, "Oh wait, I can't be an anarchist." I am the host and MC of the largest anarchist conference in the world at Anarchapulco.
Oh, in fact, Anarchapulco is how Jeremy and I know each other. I was at number 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
And and honestly, like that was the closest being in those conferences was the closest that I ever felt to being that's what church should have felt like. because I was surrounded by people who believed all sorts of things. But everybody, the common thread was respect. I will respect, I don't have to believe your beliefs, but I will respect your beliefs, and you are respecting my beliefs. And it was just common. I mean, I remember that, I was there, saw David Icke there a couple of times, Edward Griffin, just so many, like, just amazing
must have
speakers.
been at the 2019 one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was there too.
Yeah, and that, being in a circle of people, and you got people who, believed the earth, were different shapes, and that dinosaurs existed, dinosaurs didn't exist, all these beliefs, but everybody was having these conversations, beautiful conversations, and nobody was getting butt hurt. And it was, again, that's what church should have felt like. Jeremy mentioned earlier in the conversation about feeling weird walking into churches. That was the first time in my life that I ever really felt like, God, there was a true love and mercy and grace being shown at those conferences. And it's something that stuck with me to this day.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I enjoy it so much every time I've gone. I'm Berwick's
I'm actually yet to
co-author
go. I was
book.
I was put up to speak, but someone got there before me.
Oh, really?
That's another story for another day. Yes, but that's all right, because the universe still got John to find me, so it all worked out anyway.
That's great, John. I'm curious about this. When you interact with doctors, with your wife's MS, have you guys pivoted away from the traditional doctors and found somebody else that could be? I mean, what was the relationship with the doctors? When you mentioned you were asking questions and they were giving you answers, but then as you got a little bit more educated, you thought, well, maybe these answers don't really add up. What's the treatment method been like for your wife, if I may ask?
Interesting question. Let me start this with, I'm a very spirited, very opinionated individual, but I also hope I'm a very respectful individual. But my spiritedness and my opinion has, as aggressive as they may be and as spirited as they may be, I've never actually been in a fist fight before. The closest I came to a fist fight was with one of my wife's neurologists. And she had, let me just tell you the story real quick. She had the gall to ask a question. She wasn't satisfied with the non-answer that she got, so she pressed a little further, and her neurologist yelled at her in front of his staff. And my wife is a crier. I could walk up to my wife right now and go, "There's a baby somewhere that's hungry," and she will start crying. Yeah, she's a crier. She lost it, and I wasn't there at the time. I was actually at work, and she called me, and I went and got her and consoled her, and I had to get the doctor on the phone. And he knew who I was, and I was like, here's what's going to happen. I said, I'm bringing my wife back. You are going to apologize to my wife in front of me. If you don't, I know where the police department is. It's about 10 minutes away. If you don't apologize, I have at least 9.5 minutes on you before the police can take me off you. And I will make the most of that 9.5 minutes. And he's like, "Are you threatening me?" I was like, "Did I stutter?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Look, this is not where I want this to go. It'd be a whole lot easier if you just apologized to my wife." And he did the right thing, and he apologized. It was the closest I've ever been to an actual physical alteration. But that being said, that was we unplugged from their systems altogether. We into the I that is probably needs as any value. The as no manage the quantity of that all hit me.
A in a position consultation. The is fear is the one. It's still tactic. That he could
Doctor is that I nightly are no this change
and expecting, but at the same time the data didn't add, and he about not not be people is on with a got a battle now in the back people business, which is and it will be far generation need so they they're being States.
I also think that we will have and and dinner. Whoa. Trade what was you could inject yourself with to go will do whatever they have to do. Money.
Yeah. You know, when you're those guys and even take Taylor involved in professional
Oh, yeah.
and you know, it's like stuff to
Probably wow. I have a
and, part up here. They doing? They're
of the in sounds mountain town. Hey, sorry. Listen, military the and the pharmaceutical companies believe government there's more going on. It's like the drone in one area. Real band, real bands without the you are don't know, 5, 6, they've gotten all of content. So, count the used adults. They want to. They've never today have anything. I kind of lived the laugh. Their big. They
You are in 2000. Me,
but
you see it. The bound sort of like the grab him by basically and get out. Fuck you. He was back. Or doesn't. Guys, hit him in the out. Take of it goes by. Like jail. Like, well, of other sit out in the now they're it's a good we're having right clean guys. He turned back, walks I get 145. Every thrown off with them were at the bar. I didn't have
His name was people to
even the and that's a time to
everything more. Like uh, Denver to see
in our they were
live. I think, and I going to get on. I you know sell. No, but and I think the early 80s. I mean, it is. Walmart. the late in corporate. Of now, no. I don't corporate to garbage. Yeah.
Pill rep.
He
Had that.
bunch thing I true true something might happen. My position was means thing. everybody. What we learned this way, we a team really I want to have through behavior. You know, those be that's the in easy book. I just want to
Connect with me. The website, macroaggressions.io, is the best place to do that. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon.